Welcome to the Risk Management Chapter 5 lecture. I'm Dr. Bill Perkins, and today we'll be covering strategy development. And the material for this lecture was taken from the textbook Business Continuity and Risk Management, Essentials of Organizational Resilience by Kurt Engemann and Douglas Henderson. So we're going to get started. And these are the chapter objectives. First, we're going to examine strategy development. Then we're going to examine factors used to select strategies. And then we're going to identify specific strategies. And then we're going to review strategy implementation. So a reliable method should be used across an organization to analyze how disruptions may cause losses, and also to identify and select cost-justified BCM strategies. So a strategy is an approach used by an organization to treat risk in order to accomplish resiliency objectives. And strategies may prevent disasters, provide backup for lost resources, or specify alternative resources to deliver products and services. A strategy may provide protection against only one event or against several events. Continuity strategies enhance the organization's capability to respond to events in order to continue operations. Now, recovery strategies enhance the organization's capability to return to stable operations following an event. During the analysis process, crisis scenarios are useful while developing strategies. The focus is being placed on what needs to be accomplished, and organizations are divided into business as usual for unaffected areas and recovery activities for the affected areas. Off-site strategies provide coverage for the broadcast range of events. Additional backup sometimes still proves worthwhile even if off-site alternative selected, if the alternative selected covers all the functions. So, for example, on-site backup could be cost-effective and a convenient solution for localized events. The evaluation is performed across services when appropriate to determine its usefulness in other operations. Now, some events may result in consequences which are unacceptable to management, such as the loss of key markets, restrictions from regulatory agencies, or the loss of or very high losses altogether. Obtaining commitments and advising on contractual agreements is a key part of strategy development. Now, when the selection of a set of strategies is not obvious, a more detailed cost-benefit analysis is useful. A structured format to perform cost-benefit analysis is most beneficial. And in performing this analysis, the criteria used to rate strategies are taken into account. So the Business Continuity Management Program must provide backup against all major events unless senior management makes an explicit business decision to exclude certain events. And some strategies cover multiple events and cover several operations. Now, management selects strategies by reviewing and rating various combinations of strategies. Some of the evaluation criteria include cost, service level provided, time to switch over, reliability and manageability. Now, each combination of strategies may be evaluated by assigning relative ratings with respect to each criterion. The ratings of excellent, good, fair, poor, respectively, provide a qualitative evaluation useful in comparing the strategies. Now, management judgment is used in both assigning the ratings and selecting the strategies. And the advantages and disadvantages of the strategy should be determined, and the suitability of the strategy should be assessed against the BIA. Senior management commitment should always be obtained on the proposed strategies before proceeding. And a strategy usually entails both on-time costs and recurring costs. The one-time costs are determined each component of a strategy. These costs are annualized to allow for comparison of strategies, and this is done by dividing one-time costs by the useful life of the component. And depreciation guidelines are helpful in determining the useful life of each component. One-time costs include the cost of facilities, site construction equipment, computer hardware, furniture, air conditioners, plus the staff and consultants required in order to implement the strategy. And recurring costs include costs of renting/leasing, maintenance, contracted services, personnel, supplies, and utilities. The total annualized cost is the sum of the annualized one-time costs and the annualized recurring costs. Quantifying the benefits of a strategy requires reviewing all the events for which the alternative provides some protection and estimating how it reduces the expected loss of each of these events. And for each alternative strategy, the losses resulting from the various events are estimated. The service level provided under each strategy may impact these losses. And direct losses include asset losses such as furniture, computers, and buildings, along with financial losses such as fees, interest, and compensation. Indirect losses include the loss of future revenue and consequential damages. Estimation of these losses should be performed in the context of the uh, country risk, the expected response of the competitors, the strength of the customer relations, and the impact on image. All losses should be considered in conjunction with insurance coverage. This entails incorporating deductibles, maximum limits, and future premium increases as a result of a disaster in the estimates. And the benefit of a strategy is the reduction of potential losses compared to the base case. The impact of an event depends upon its extent and duration. The expected loss from an event is the product of the losses from that event and its probability. The net benefit of an alternative is obtained by subtracting the total annualized cost of the alternative from its benefit. And alternatives with positive net benefit are considered for selection as part of the overall strategy, while a structured and quantitative approach to selecting strategies is beneficial. There are difficulties in estimating probabilities and in determining costs and losses. Sensitivity analysis should be used to determine how changes in the estimates of costs, losses, and probabilities would affect the selection of a strategy. So in this cost-benefit analysis, we've been speaking about you want to look at the event impact, fixed and variable cost of control, change in expected annual loss, and difficulties. So selecting strategies involves reviewing business continuity objectives, identifying potential strategies, assessing strategies against the BIA, and consolidating strategies across the organization, determining advantages and disadvantages, conducting cost-benefit analysis, and presenting findings for senior management's approval. So before you select and closing of strategy, the development section, ensure you establish parameters for the BCM program. Review infrastructure required for operations and assess the level of business resources available. And you want to ascertain the BC strategies are initially explored in the BIA. And then you want to document strategies in the BCP with management approval. And the type of organization plus the human resource, physical and technological environment necessary to conduct operations must be defined. Now, if the organization requires the use of valuable specialized equipment, or if there are special requirements or building systems of the physical environment, a crisis that damages assets would result in an extended period of downtime. So when determining the appropriate planning assumptions, I want you to consider the following. First, what are the facility requirements of the organization? So some service industry businesses require only general office space, but other manufacturing businesses require specialized facilities. So you want to consider that. Also, what are the facility content requirements of the organization? And note that insurance can cover the cost of replacing expensive equipment, but it will not be able to guarantee quick replacement of specialized manufacturing equipment. Next, you want to ask what are the community infrastructure support services that are necessary to support the organization. And with that, nearly every organization will require police, fire, water, and other essential services to be available. Organizations without backup generators will likely be reliant on public electrical services, and some organizations can operate in the short term without normal communication services, while others cannot. And finally, what is the reliance on IT? And is IT crucial for the operational groups, or just certain support departments with non-critical operations? So in today's environment, IT support services are likely needed to support many, if not all, of the critical operations. So when considering the appropriate strategies, it is important to review risk assessment and the business impact analysis based on the crisis events that are the most important. So I want you to consider the following. First, does the crisis provide a warning period? Then it may be possible to protect organizations' assets by, for example, pre-positioning equipment to a safer location. Employees can also be pre-positioned to remote locations and perhaps work from these locations just to ensure continuity of operations. Next, can the crisis affect a large area, essentially a community-wide crisis? And in addition to a direct organization damage, the normal community infrastructure support system may be degraded. Employees may not be able to return to work. Remember, relocation of the organization within the community may be difficult or impossible in the short term. Next, you want to ask, does this crisis damage organizational assets, or does it just deny access to the workplace? And finally, does the crisis pose a life or health hazard? Special measures should be given to safety and security concerns. Now, it is vital to consider the resources available for business continuity management. Many, if not most, strategies require some amount of time and level of financial commitment. So, no properly run organization works with a unlimited budget. So, it is necessary for management to determine strategies based on the cost as well as the effectiveness of each individual strategy. So based on the resources available, consider the following. First, what types or alternate sites are available? Have vendor-sponsored alternate sites been secured? Does the organization have other alternate locations that can be used in a crisis? You need to consider IT and non-IT aspects separately. What is the budget available to spend on strategies? So again, consider IT and non-IT aspects separately. And finally, how are resources allocated between strategies designed to prevent or mitigate a crisis and strategies designed to respond to that crisis? Effective strategies designed to prevent or mitigate a crisis could reduce the cost of responding to a crisis, or better yet, eliminate the need to respond to a crisis. So remember, before selecting strategies, it is necessary to establish parameters under which the business continuity management program must operate. It is important to review the resources required to conduct operations in addition to the requirements necessary to conduct operations. It is also important to assess the level of the organization resources that are available, and strategies focus on the maintenance and recovery of critical operations and do not necessarily attempt to replicate existing procedures. And the organizational broad-based business continuity strategies will encompass the following. You have your pre-crisis avoidance, pre-crisis damage mitigation, post-crisis business continuity, and post-crisis recovery strategies. Now, narrowing the focus, there are specific strategies, and they include the following. For alternate sites, these are remote locations where work can be conducted. Alternate sites are an important component of any good strategy, An IT alternate site represents a location where IT functions can be performed, and an office alternate site represents a location where non-IT personnel can work. For a specific organization, the IT alternate site and the office alternate site are sometimes the same physical location. Now, office alternate sites are often multiple sites for larger organizations. Next, you have backup equipment, and that's additional equipment that is often secured if the equipment is critical, not overly expensive, or represents a single point failure. Now, this practice is often used for specialized manufacturing equipment, electrical power generation, and IT hardware. Next, you have buffer stock, and that's securing additional inventories, often at off-site locations. It'll provide a cushion if, unfortunately, introduces idle asset inefficiencies in times of normal operations. Then you have building fortification, and that is the bunker approach. That's what it's also known as. And that's the fortification of the facility or critical areas of the facility. It's a pre-crisis strategy, and this is an important planning component, especially for organizations that require specialized facilities or have expensive critical equipment to protect. Now, fortification can be broken down into two distinct categories. So first you have your permanent fortifications that are constantly in place, and then you have your temporary fortifications that are deployed when necessary. So examples of permanent fortifications are levees and check valves for flood control, or the installation of wind-resistant glass for hurricane protection. And then you have your temporary fortifications, and they include the deployment of sandbags for flood control or the deployment of storm shutters for hurricane protection. Then you have your operations with multiple locations, and they can provide some internal redundancy by performing identical tasks at multiple locations. So distributing critical operations to multiple locations will ensure critical operations at some minimal level in the event of the destruction or disablement of one location. So this is a powerful strategy for organizations with multiple locations, but unfortunately, it often introduces inefficiencies by making it difficult to minimize inventories in times of normal operations. Next, we have distributive warehousing, and this is most closely associated with the warehousing of finished products at some location other than where it was manufactured, and this procedure will help ensure that some finished products will be available if manufacturing operations are disrupted. Distributive warehousing can also be utilized for raw materials, and this strategy is most appropriate for manufacturing industries, but unfortunately introduces idle asset inefficiencies in times of normal operations. Next, you have insurance, and insurance will typically play an important role in the business continuity management strategy and should be assessed. Although insurance may pay a portion of the loss, it should be considered as part of a comprehensive approach. Self-insurance is not a complete solution, so insurance payments providing for a loss of profits is usually assessed on profits immediately before a disaster. So insurance companies are getting more selective about accepting claims as valid. And then you have your manual overrides, and these are often less efficient manual procedures that can be utilized if equipment is damaged or destroyed, or if IT services are disrupted. So in continuing with our specific strategies, first we have, or next I should say, you have your maximized work hours, and that's expanding work hours or hours of operations can be an important strategy that has multiple applications. So for an organization with multiple operations after a crisis at one location, it might be possible to add an additional shift or another undamaged location. And it may be practical to expand the work hours to include overtime for unaffected employees. And this strategy is most effective for organizations with multiple operations, but is equally effective for single site employers that have an operational alternate site. Next, you have multiple or alternate suppliers. And as an ongoing practice, utilizing multiple suppliers will help to ensure a continuous supply of raw materials. All manufacturing industries should have alternate suppliers available in the event of a disruption of raw material from a primary supplier. So many manufacturers are reluctant to use this strategy and prefer to use single source suppliers for volume discounts and quality control reasons. Next, you have mutual aid agreements, and those are it's an agreement between two or more organizations to provide a resource when one of the businesses or one of the organizations experiences an outage. And next you have business alliances, and they're similar, except the agreement is between organizations that have a mutual business interest. For example, a business alliance is an agreement between a manufacturing business that supplies critical components to another manufacturing business. So business alliances are more likely to be effective after an actual crisis than the typical mutual aid agreements. Next, you have outsourcing. And outsourcing is like having other organizations perform certain work functions. Now, this strategy is usually an additional or supplemental rather than a primary strategy. Many organizations have certain ancillary operations such as internal print shops, mail distribution, and employee cafeterias, which could be outsourced. The effectiveness and efficiency of outsourcing should be explored. Factors to consider regarding outsourcing parts of business continuity analysis and planning include organizational knowledge, expertise, and experience. Factors to consider regarding outsourcing include cost, commitment, availability, response, and risk. Next, you have your personal protection equipment, PPE, very hot topic right now. These are your personal devices designed to reduce or eliminate the contact of hazardous materials to an individual. So the most likely use of PPE is for employees who handle hazardous materials in manufacturing industries and for any employee during a pandemic outbreak. Next, you have portable equipment. Portable equipment can sometimes be used to supply critical services such as compressed air and chilled water, normally supplied by permanent building systems. So portable generators can have important applications for most any organization. Portable equipment can generally be secured quickly and often much faster than severely damaged building systems can be repaired or replaced. Next, you have pre-positioning, and pre-positioning involves just stay by a second here. Okay, so we left off at pre-positioning. I'm back. I just had to plug my computer in. Pre-positioning involves the relocation of physical assets or employees to a safe location prior to a crisis event. And this is a powerful strategy for organizations facing a serious risk that provides an extended warning period, such as a hurricane or flood. So when relocating employees out of the area, it will be necessary to consider transportation, lodging, employee families, overtime, and other logistical factors in advance. So preposition also includes the relocation of physical assets to a higher floor or to a distant higher elevation location if a flood threatens. And finally, on this slide, we have the quick resupply or just-in-time strategy. This is a rapid replenishment of inventory, supplies, or equipment. This is a cost-effective strategy for manufacturing industries. However, this approach will not be effective for replacing highly specialized and expensive manufacturing equipment. So there is also a reliance on the transportation infrastructure, which may be disabled by a community-wide crisis if you have a community-wide crisis. So continuing with our specific strategies, all right, we have our redundant operations, and that's our continuous processing. And this is a mirror image operation being performed at another location. This strategy is often extremely expensive as it requires redundancy of personnel, equipment, and infrastructure. And then we have our remote site storage, and this is mostly closely associated with the securing of information records, both in electronic and in hard copy forms at another location. And this is a critical ongoing crisis avoidance strategy. Now, materials vital to operations should be backed up and retrievable. Vital materials include business continuity plans, software and data, procedures, agreements, contracts, leases, insurance policies, supplies, forms, plans, drawings, blueprints, key passwords, checkbooks, credit cards, and cash. Next, we have our social distancing policies, SDP, and these are personal procedure policies designed to reduce or eliminate the exchange of hazardous infections between individuals. They're most likely used SDP during a pandemic outbreak, as we have going on now. Remember, this textbook was written in 2012. So some of these terms seem like they are very common now, and you may even see some innovations that have emerged that may even be in contrary to what you read in the textbook, or has even introduced new heights to what you're reading in the textbook. So we have, moving on, we have subcontractors, and that's the availability of some subcontractors, and that is a critical component of a good strategy. As a backup mechanism, subcontractors should be readily available for facility cleanup and repair, or repairing equipment, replacement of equipment, building content replacement, and communication infrastructure repair. An organization should not place undue emphasis on small or local subcontractors that are subject to the same community-wide crisis events. So you want to make sure your subcontractors may be located out of the area, or else they're going to be experiencing the same issues your organization's experiencing. So you want to consider backup subcontractors out of the area subcontractors, and large subcontractors with multiple locations. Now we have temporary structures, otherwise known as modules. And arguably, this is a special type of alternate site that is rapidly deployed to replace damaged or destroyed facilities. Mobile sites would also fall into this category. Next, we have the work from a customer or client location. And this strategy is usually an additional or supplemental rather than a primary strategy. So although it is probably not possible to relocate the entire organization to a customer or client location, it is often possible to send customer service representatives to key customer or client operations. So arguable, this is a subset of the business alliance strategy that we described earlier. And then finally, we have the work from home or hotels, which has grown to be very popular. As I said earlier, remember this textbook's from 2012. So now, we have teleworking is almost second nature, and even being now integrated into primary strategies instead of contingency operations for organizations, for they found it to be effective and efficient, and cost effective in a lot of ways. So with the in accordance with our textbook, though, with the internet, cloud computing, and other technological advancements, this strategy, the work from home strategy, has become increasingly important. And to rely on this strategy, it is advisable to have an IT alternate site that will remain operational or can be activated quickly. So the ability to access data and applications over the internet will be critical. Sufficient laptops, air cards, cell phones, SATCOM devices, PDAs, and other resources need to be planned for and secured in advance. And here we have a list of vital materials that should be backed up and retrievable. You want your access to your business continuity plans, software and data, procedures, agreements, contract leases, insurance policies, supplies, forms, plans, drawings, blueprints, keys, passwords, checkbooks, credit cards, and cash, as we stated earlier. Kind of covered that already. Now, some strategies include obtaining business continuity services from external vendors. In such cases, a request for proposal needs to be developed, and the steps involved with a request for proposal include clarify assumptions, specify requirements, issue a request for proposal. Then you want to review submitted proposals, interview vendors, check references, tour sites, and then you want to negotiate the contract awards or awards of contract. And contract negotiations includes factors such as services and fees, IT, testing, exclusivity, declaration determination, liabilities, and early termination. So these service level agreements are written documents between organizations that specify services and or performance levels to be provided. So after senior management has selected the strategies, actions must be taken to implement the strategies, and implementing the strategies will take time, effort, and likely involve a financial commitment. So in certain circumstances or certain instances, the financial commitment can be significant. Implementing the strategies usually involves activities such as acquiring additional equipment, arranging for contractual agreements, physical changes to the workplace environment, and preparing backup and off-site facilities to ensure that appropriate documentation is in place. And since the strategies define business continuity procedures of an organization, these strategies need to be implemented prior to or simultaneous with the drafting of the plan documents. So in conclusion, remember selected strategies are driven by results of a business impact analysis. That's the BIA. We spoke about senior management improves business continuity strategies. Remember, it's always the senior management. Forward-looking organizations are creating infrastructures resilient enough to eliminate or reduce the impact of disasters. So business continuity management needs to be involved in long-term planning to foster this approach. So that concludes our Chapter 5 lecture. Make sure you check Blackboard for the Chapter 5 deliverables, and I will see you in Chapter 6.